John's going to do it.
John's going to say,
Yeah.
okay.
So let me introduce the framing of today's discussion. Thank you all for taking time to be with us today. The City of Austin has a really strong emphasis and pride in its open data efforts and how we are really working with the community to further develop our strategies so that we can really solve some of these community issues together. Austin is, while we're #1 on many lists here in the nation, we're also one of the most economically segregated cities in the United States. And that's something that's a challenge for us in this organization, as we are the conveners and the facilitators of these community efforts and really managing these policy efforts to serve those populations. It's something that we're striving towards, to connect those community leaders out there with data products that can benefit them so they can best serve those populations. Sharon helped us to understand some of the goals that drove that plan and what we were able to do with understanding the need to access the internet and technology hardware, the need to understand relevancy and how we can really articulate that to different populations in the community, and ways that we can measure that success, which is something that we want to do utilizing our open data products. So you guys, I appreciate you taking time out to kind of learn about some of our boots on the ground efforts and meet some of our city staff who are going to be working through this and highlighting some of the efforts today to you.
But really, our story, and I've been at the city for 16 years, so I feel like I'm starting to be a grizzled veteran of the city government. But we started really looking at open data in 2009. And a lot of it had to do with this redesign project that we were trying to do for the city's website, austintexas.gov. And that was a process that really started in 2007. As you probably know, in government, sometimes things take a lot of winding paths before they actually get to become a reality. Because we're talking about open, one of the key things that we decided to do at that time was to make a switch from proprietary software to open source software. And that's significant because I mentioned all the trouble we had with RFPs, with trying to actually go through purchasing and getting a vendor to come in and do the project for us. We all along internally were saying, like, let us do it and let us use open source. But we had a very rigid structure that was saying, no, we have to have a vendor who we can blame when something goes wrong. You know, that's the government sort of mentality. And so when we finally got to this point where the frustration level was so high, RFPs were failing, that we said, let us do it using open source. Let us partner with this group up in Austin to help guide us along the way, and we'll get it done. Because we did have our data portal launched in 2011, it made us a great candidate to be partners with Code for America in 2012, and that was another significant, milestone in the city's open data initiative. When we talk to departments, a lot of times we hear fears about what evil things will happen with my data if I put it out there, what will be discovered, all these types of things. And my point to them has always been, they can get your data anyway. It just takes a public information request. If you do it proactively, you'll be demonstrating your willingness to collaborate, your willingness to cooperate, your willingness to share, and also open up the door to opportunity.
The city has data on the demographics of neighborhoods. They have that data I talked about, police and all that kind of stuff, the demographics of the people living there. And sometimes those communities, when they engage politically, nowadays they engage in social media. And their social media neighborhoods, their communities, may not be the same communities that I engage in. Right? And they're very vibrant, they're very, very powerful, they're very motivating, but they're separate, and they don't see one another. And so sometimes we don't have visibility in it. So some of the research that's being done with the universities is take the city data that sort of describes the different neighborhoods that we have in Austin. So the research is going to be doing things like seeing whether there's a community out there that's talking vigorously about something the city's doing. They're just not doing it to the city. They're just not telling it to the city, but they're talking about it a lot, right? So the academia is actually taking the city data, working with social media data, and trying to come up with something that is valuable, research-wise. The professors get their papers published and their tenure and that kind of thing. But also it's very valuable for the city to understand whether it's really engaging the community the way it should. I don't know what the weather's like in Portugal, but in Texas you could have You go a mile that way, it could be raining like crazy. I mean, buckets. And here it's not.
It's drought conditions.
Drought conditions. And this happens. So my parents live 200 feet from me down the hill, and there's been cases where they're in your hill. My dad loves the weather, and he calls. He's 82 years old, and he's always wondering when it's going to rain. So he said, "Dad, it's raining like crazy down here. What about up there?" And there's been cases where it's raining in his house and not raining. So what I'm saying is, back to this, is that this is going to be an opportunity for universities and a company to work with the city of Austin to do stuff, research, and help teach students, and in the end, make something that will impact the community and may save lives. You get those folks coming in, and they're doing research for the city, funded by external groups, and we get value. You get value for just one data scientist, right? Now we're bringing businesses in as well, and we were talking about using social media data involved in this, mixing social media with city data. And we have a project involved with AT&T, UT's Center for Transportation Research, and the Austin Transportation Department, with some input from the Austin Fire Department. And you can imagine AT&T has a lot of information. If you have I don't know who runs the phones in Portugal, but AT&T has roughly 30, maybe 40% of the Austin market. So if you're using your phone here, you may have AT&T it knows about your device, right? And they have a lot of data about what that device is doing, and by inference you can figure out what that person is doing, but we're not looking at that part. So you can imagine if nowadays 40% of the automobiles, maybe 40%, maybe 30%, we don't know, maybe it's just a quarter, we can track where those automobiles are, where they're going. We can track maybe every 10 seconds and be accurate within maybe 10 meters, maybe 5 meters, maybe 3 meters. One of the key things if you go out and do some of this stuff in your own world is you have to find a management structure, an organization structure that gives you some freedom. And that freedom is freedom to try new things, but new things mean freedom to fail.
Try it again. Bon dia.
A lot of people think when they hear the word hacker, they hear a teenager in a hoodie in a basement on a computer breaking into a banking website.
That was funny. I like that part.
This is a newer definition of the word hack, which means to use your skills to make good.
That's what this is about, to get that.
We had a long and involved process leading up to the hackathon where we solicited ideas for what we should work on at the ATX Hack for Change. The traditional model of a hackathon does revolve around coding and technology. We purposefully widened the umbrella here. So we had people with design skills, graphic artists.
So incredibly grateful to be in this city, and it's because all of these engaged citizens who are talented and committed and really care about what's happening in our city, in our state, in our world, come together and present solutions.
Is a demonstration of Austin's civic character. These are 200 volunteers that have given up their weekend to come and lend their skills to some of Austin's toughest social challenges. And I think that's just such an amazing indication of who we are as a people.
That's the real value add for open data, and I think we learned quite a bit at the hackathon. I mentioned a photographer. They wanted to create a Wikimedia type database with open stock footage so that everyone could collectively use it and add to it.
What types of private sector and academic innovations can come from open government initiatives?
AT&T, if you're familiar with data, they say they have for every one of us, or every device, not every one of us, but I guess with every device, they have up to 70,000 columns of data. So think of a spreadsheet with 70,000 columns, right? And no one, now I don't want to get into some, all the bad things that can happen with them knowing so much about everything they know. There's a database out there with all that information about what our devices are doing. But AT&T wants to figure out, as a company, how to monetize that, meaning how to make money off of that data. And there's many of the people, just like you and me, working in AT&T who say, well, we can make money like a lot of other folks are making money with their public social data, and that's selling advertisements. Google sells advertisements, Amazon sells products, all that kind of selling stuff, right? But AT&T also sees that it has data that can be used for social good, right? And so some of the projects they're considering, they have to dig into their coffers, their bank account, and pull out money to pay for this transportation work. But that's not sustainable, right? A business cannot survive by being socially good all the time without making money, right? So AT&T, what we're working with them on is, let's say we do have some solutions for transportation. Who do we sell can they take that research, that knowledge, and say we improve how we time our signals, our traffic signals? Can they turn that around and make money off of that? Now, the first thing they say, well, we can sell the technology to cities around the country. Well, cities don't spend money very, very fast. They don't have a lot of money. If you ever worked for us, I'm learning in the city, it takes a year and a half, 2 years to get something bought, right? Unless it's below a certain amount of money, and then it doesn't become interesting for the company selling it, right? But if they can turn it around and maybe sell something to consumers, is there something they could figure out from traffic that they can tell consumers? Where are people going? Are they, look, there's a big event today and everybody's taking these lanes there now, because AT&T will know that people are talking about this event and they're going to it. And they may change their traffic recommendations differently than a Google or a TomTom or any of these other wayfinding apps, right? So let's presume that we have a bunch of data out there, and one of the things about the city, we have silos of data. Different departments put out different data. And there are rules covering health data. There's rules covering police data. Like you can know who's been arrested. You can see a mugshot, but maybe you can't see some other information. And there's a time lag, and I don't know all the rules, but there's some information about being arrested is public information, but some of that's protected for both the police because they're doing an investigation, and maybe for the person being arrested because they haven't been convicted of anything yet, right? But some of the things, there's rules there. But the interesting thing about a lot of the rules is that these rules were made in the last 50 years, 20 years ago, 30 years, even 10 years ago. And the difference between those times and now is we have a lot of compute horsepower, meaning computational horsepower, and we have a lot of data. And we have great algorithms. And we have social media. And you maybe have heard the joke that, I actually talked to one person who believes this, but that Facebook is actually a plot by the CIA to spy on Americans because at least Facebook users reveal more about themselves than the CIA ever could find out otherwise, right? And so the fact that people do that on a Facebook or a Twitter is very interesting. You have companies that can take this anonymous data that really is anonymous, and you have 6 data sources, and they merge in some social media data, and then they start being able to say, this anonymous data, this entry here belongs to Matt. I'm 99% sure because it can't be anybody else, because by mixing that, take those 6 anonymous sources, mix in social media, throw in an algorithm or two, and lots of computation horsepower, I have a pretty good idea who that anonymous data belongs to, and so therefore it's no longer anonymous. It's a licensing policy that a lot of companies are used to. A lot of the phone apps you have nowadays are using data that's not guaranteed to be accurate, and the companies are dealing with that all the time, and it seems to be the preferred model. So that's a legalistic licensing way of saying what is the government's role in data and for industries. It basically says do whatever you want with it, but we're not promising it's accurate, but we will promise we're trying our darndest to make it accurate, right? So another thing that I think, but a role that the government departments could do to encourage people to use it is to bring them to the data and work with them like we've been describing today, because the government's data will be better quality when people start using it and complaining about it. Because we want to hear what's good and bad about the data, what they want to see in the data. Is the format not correct? For example, the APD files that the Austin Police Department files that go out there on the web are probably different format than Chicago's or New York's or San Francisco's. So let's say you're researchers and you want to compare Chicago data with New York data, with Austin data, with the Seattle data, with Dallas data. Well, right now you have to do a lot of reformatting, trying to figure out whether it's the same data. it will be nice in the future if we had some formats. And so what we're doing right now is looking at some cities that are ahead of us in terms of quantities of data and seeing what they're doing with their formats and discussing those formats and saying these are good examples, Austin, to consider when you're putting your data out there. So that's not quite an, I'm taking a little off topic from the question, but it's an example of what government can do to make the data better for the public, better for industry, better for advocacy.
Innovation is such a buzzword, but whereas what I'm hearing from y'all is that you ensure the integrity of the data, that it's available, that it's clean, usable. Our role is to ensure there's an adherence to a rigorous creative problem-solving process, and we call that process, that methodology, strategic co-creation. And we want to be able to understand the data as a tool, but also ethnography. What are people's experience who are living that challenge in their day-to-day lives, and how can we hear from them, it may be in a more qualitative way, how can we bring that into the discussion as we look for solutions and clarify and frame the entire challenge going on, so that if the correct, appropriate tool idea is an app, that it not only uses the data that's usable and clean, but it's also has a user interface and it's able to interact with the population that would benefit from it. So I think those two things are very important partners together.
A lot of the departments who were very reserved about sharing their data on the open data portal were concerned about context. That if they just put a spreadsheet out there, it doesn't tell how they manage the data, why they manage it, what this field means, what that means. There was a lot of room for interpretation for somebody who's not skilled, right? Or somebody who is skilled and has an agenda to do something with it, right? From a technology perspective, we have a hard time taking what people in the community develop and say, like, hey, we want to give this back to you, City of Austin, because of what I mentioned earlier. I don't have the infrastructure that supports open source very easily. I don't have the expertise in a lot of these technologies that industry is using. So a lot of times we do have to look externally to say, like, well, if this app has a future, it's going to have to be something where a company is going to support it, or a group like Open Austin can maybe figure out how they're going to manage these things and rely on the data. But I think the valuable part, and I think Charlotte's example illustrates that, is that you had a group of people from a diverse skill set of the community to help architect a solution. And oftentimes the things you get out of a hackathon are going to be a great proof of concept, or they're going to be the great foundational work for something else that's going to evolve. And so a part of the outreach question too that I wanted to address is, like, if any of this is going to be sustainable, and it's going to be because it's going to have to be, it's going to be the community taking on a lot of ownership of the challenges of the community. In the video, there's a little clip of one of the entrepreneurs who's talking to the group of programmers and innovators who came to kind of help and said, who are you waiting for to solve your problem? Are you waiting for government to solve your problem? Well, get ready to wait, because it's going to take a long, long time. So all this is doing is churning, and it's creating really energy in the community to solve their own problems with government as a partner.
Because there is some discussion about using city data and hospital data. Because I don't know what it's like in Portugal, but in the UK they have a nice government database on health, because they've had government-run health for a long time of some sort. But here you have one hospital has data on you, and if you went to another hospital, they have data on you. And if you went to your general practitioner, he has data, he or she has data. If you had a cardiologist, they have data, a radiologist has data. And what they do now is they have staff that sends fax to each other. So let's say I have a doctor, I have prescription, I have medicine from my cardiologist, I have medicine from my hospital visit, I have medicine from this, and each one of them has a prescription. They coordinate now, in many cases, by sending faxes to each other. And then they have staff that takes the faxes from this is almost a funny thing. This is sad how funny it is. Or it's funny how sad it is. I'm not sure. But they have staff that takes all these different faxes, and then my general practitioner doctor then has a database of all the medicines I've gotten from these other places, because he's had it faxed to him, and he's got a database. Now, my cardiologist is supposed to have the same, I'm not saying I have a cardiologist, but my cardiologist has the same data because he's got it faxed to him. And this is pretty bad, right? In what the United States calls the most amazing healthcare system in the world, right? So what the hospitals would like to do is get around that. They want to share that data, but what they don't want to do, because it will help them, they won't have to pay staff to read faxes and enter data, right? They can get rid of that 10 million, 20, they actually said $10–20 million a year per hospital, the healthcare network, just to do that kind of stuff. If they could have a single database where all that kind of information is shared, wonderful things happen. The problem that comes up, and one reason it doesn't happen, is that now there's a risk that they're going to start seeing other data. Let's say we have two hospitals, hospitals A and B in Austin, and hospital A somehow finds out that hospital B does cancer treatment 20% cheaper, and they have the same success rate. Well, part of them says, well, I want to know how you do that, and maybe that's a good thing. But the other one says, well, I'm not sure I want to give you that. Unfortunately, that does happen. But what they really care about is the outcome better if St. David's Hospital B has better outcomes? Patients may go to that hospital if they know that, right? And you might think, well, that's the way it should be. But in the United States, they're competing against each other, right? So they want to protect that information, but they also want to share that information because, they can deliver better health care. They can have fewer errors. You can imagine if they're not faxing all the time, they can reduce their expenses, deliver health care in a better way, and they can make more money. And I'll give you one final example. If they can make if they have more data about you, and it's about your health, it's protected, a lot of privacy issues. They can give you better health and make more money. For example, like a lot of the big companies here, an IBM or an AMD or a Dell, they have company healthcare plans. I'm not sure how it works in Portugal, but you go to IBM and there's a healthcare plan. The city of Austin has a healthcare plan, right? And sometimes these healthcare plans, the city of Austin or IBM might pay their healthcare provider, the insurance company, $5,000 per employee, $10,000, right? Well, the way it works is if that hospital delivers less than $10,000 worth of care to you, and not just the hospital, the doctors, they've made money because they got paid $10,000 and delivered $2,000, right? That's what they want to do. Now that you can see where the business part comes in. Well, that healthcare network is charging the IBM $10,000 per employee, and they're making $8,000 because they're not no one's getting that sick. Well, maybe their competitor comes in and says, okay, we're going to offer IBM an $8,000 per employee thing, right? That's cheaper for IBM. IBM makes more money, employers pay less. All sorts of great things happen. It's the marketplace. One thing that has always happened is that the people sharing the data haven't made money. And what we're trying to set up here in Austin is that if they start sharing data, they make money. I mean, I don't want to keep apologizing for that, but you get people making money on sharing their data, they're going to participate.
Is there programs or initiatives to get people in some of these, income-poor spaces that are often subjects of social entrepreneurship?
We're evaluating some different crowdsourcing tools that allow people to tell their story in a meaningful way. We're doing a project right now with Austin Resource Recovery. They collect our waste and recyclables, and they have done quite a bit of data analysis on how much trash is going into the landfill that could have been diverted otherwise to be recycled. And they've done it by district, so they see that some districts are recycling more than other districts. And so they have this data, they have this baseline, right? But they want to understand a little bit more insights around that. We have different engagement tools that we're using throughout the city. Some of those are disjointed and used for one initiative here and another initiative there. Some people going out to the community and doing town halls, but you get the same people showing up over and over again. So how do we reach that population that's very kind of secluded and doesn't have that privilege? So that's a real big challenge and something that I think we need to continue to look at.
appreciate your time and insights and examples.